again.
Hey, welcome everybody to our Order of Honorable Men podcast. I'm Adam. I'm here with Niels and Haye, and today we are going to address the topic of death and the importance of discussing this topic as men. Um, for me, this has some relevance because just last week I celebrated the death anniversary of my father, who passed away just a couple days ago. Actually, it was just 2 days ago, um, back in 2015. So it was a day for me to kind of really reflect on yeah, what death meant to me, and it's a topic that the three of us have actually discussed quite a bit. It tends to come up more and more and more, especially as we're getting older, and uh, this feeling of being immortal when you're younger has started to change into, wow, okay, I'm at the halfway point of my life now. And what does the rest of my life look like? And I feel anyway that like the clock starts to tick and I'm hearing the ticking of the clock going louder. And what's coming up for me is, what have I accomplished in my life? What am I going to be remembered for? How much longer do I actually have? Things in my body is starting to change. I'm starting to see that viscerally. I look around at friends of mine who are now, getting hip replacements and getting, all these things that we used to joke about and talk about when we were younger about, quote unquote, old people. But the fact is, we're all getting older all the time. So it's an important topic that I think many people, especially men, tend to kind of push away and disregard because we want to be strong. We want to be seen as invincible and immortal. And the truth is that something that we all are all going to face at some point. Um, yeah, so I was just hoping to get some perspective and just open up this discussion about it a little bit more.
Um, Death has been present in my life ever since I was 23, because that's when my father had a heart attack at the breakfast table and he was gone. And that threw me into the deep. The very last conversation I had with him, funny enough, was about, what is life all about? And that conversation has been a guiding principle in my life because he says, who will judge if your life has been successful or not? Probably you're the only one who knows. You're the one who knows when you die and you then look back whether you did what you could have done. So he said, son, make sure that you don't regret not having done something because society wouldn't accept it, because you feared it would not be a success, because you didn't dare do it. And if you're born with, he called it 12 cylinders, and he said you are, you can easily zoom through life on four cylinders. But that's not going to bring you a happy death. You want to near the end with basically everything breaking down in your body because the people said, wow, we didn't even know it was possible to do this.
Mm.
And only you know what that is. So in that sense, death has been a great inspiration point for me in my life. Quite a few times in my life, I've stood for decisions where society or my environment would say, no, you can't do that. And I just felt I have to do this. I cannot live with the fact that I haven't tried this, that I haven't experienced this.
Mm.
So for me, death has been funny as it may seem, because death itself, we don't know. Well, I know a little bit about my mother, and apparently it's very beautiful because she had a near-death experience. So the only thing I fear about death is the way it happens. Does it hurt a lot?
Mm.
But the fact that life comes to an end and that by that time I want to have this feeling, shit, I've lived what I wanted to live. irrespective if people appreciate that or not. So to make it completely independent of outside feedback. My experience is that the more I do that, the more feedback I get that people say, "Oh, you're really living your life."
Mm. Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's
but
kind of weird.
I've always thought like the saddest thing in the world in life is a dream that's unfulfilled,
Exactly.
is something that someone wanted to do in their life and then they were just too scared to do it, or family was holding them back, or a job was holding them back, or whatever the fear was. And then you're laying on your deathbed and you're like, God, I wish I would have learned to play the violin or whatever it happens to be, or done this job, or traveled to this place. And for me, that this idea of regret, I think, is the biggest fear that I would have anyways, lying on my deathbed and regretting that I didn't do something that I really wanted to because of whatever reason. And in the end, you look back at those reasons that you don't do those things, and they seem very trivial.
Yeah.
Well, I had a job that I needed to keep working at in order to make money, in order to pay my bills. And then when you're on your deathbed, it's like, oh, I let
Yeah.
that hold me back. What was I thinking?
Mm.
And I guess another angle on death, because this is actually what the meditation on death kind of provokes for while you're still alive. I mean, that's what you guys are talking about. But I think also on a more emotional level to start practicing relaxing into the fact that you're going to die. Yeah, so that you really like allow that idea and the feelings that go with that to be present with that. Um, Let me put it this way. Last week I had a funeral of the best friend of my mother. And some people said to me like, hey, I wish you good luck because it will be tough. Yeah, going to a funeral and being with the sadness, etc., etc. And I was like, nah, no, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to be with that sadness and to allow it to really feel all that. I knew her also pretty well. And it's like, okay, it's not between quotes nice, but it's a certain quality of depth in those moments that are opportunities, when you go to a funeral of someone else. And yeah, and I think that is also, it helps me also to distinguish between what is really important and what is not. Because funny enough, being around death when it comes to a funeral or people who are sick and are going to die, life is very sharp there. And it's actually very nice there because it is all very present there. It's like, when there is birth and when there's death, that's actually that's actually the highest quality of life.
And it's the
My
two
experience.
moments in life that there's an absolute truth
Yeah,
also,
excellent.
right? Like all the other things that you learn in life and all the conditioning that you have, you never know what's actually reality, but birth and death are two of the things that there's an absolute truth in it. And there's a realness to that when you're at a funeral and you're experiencing that, right?
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Haye.
Hmm.
I know you are a volunteer in a hospice. How has that changed your perspective on life?
I was just going to ask you that question. It's a great
Yeah.
question.
Well, it's difficult, of course, to say, to pinpoint that. But overall, I can say what I see there in the hospice with people that are dying there is it becomes very clear that what is important for them in that time is connection with their family and their loved ones. That is all that counts. And they cannot have enough of it. That's what I get. But there's also people there who still watching the news. I'm like, you're dying and you're still watching the news. And so, that's also interesting to see. Are they still concerned about healthy food. I'm like, what the fuck? You know, you're full of cancer, just, and they still want to have like organic food. It's okay. These are, yeah. But what I notice is that when I'm at a hospice, there is like, as I just said, there is this quality of presence, and which is almost, I wouldn't say addictive, but it's a nice space to be in. It reminds me of the space with my grandmother and my grandfather. The rhythm of, 8:30 breakfast, 10 o'clock coffee, 12 o'clock lunch, 3:30 tea, 5:30 dinner, you know. And that is like this rhythm. And
Yeah.
somehow working in the hospice kind of has, I, I started reappreciating that rhythm, which is also, I guess, a metaphor for the rhythm of life. Okay,
Yeah.
this is it, this is it, this is it. And it's okay. We're gonna die, and that's okay. We don't need to fight it. So that might be the biggest thing that, Niels, that I take away from working in the hospice, that it's okay that we're gonna die. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with dying. You know, it's a beautiful thing to die. It's beautiful. You can't escape it. So it's like, it's your whole life you're building towards that moment.
So why is it important in men's work?
Well, I think part of what you just said, reflecting on the fact that you're dying, m- if you really let that sink in, hopefully it will make it very clear what there, what what you truly value in life and what you want to live up to and what you still need to do in order to die with as less regret as possible.
Yeah, I think it helps to shift your priorities.
Exactly.
When you begin to meditate on death, then it has a way of filtering out all of the things that aren't really that important. Because suddenly, like you said, connection becomes very important. And connection is one of those things that we often lose. If we're talking about um, a lot of the issues that we deal with through life, it's because of disconnection. It's the way that we have disconnected as children, even way back when, in order to protect ourselves from dysfunction in the family, from problems with our parents. And so we're fighting our whole lives for connection. And I think if you can meditate on death, then you start to see how important connection becomes. We try to find connection in all kinds of different ways, but the things that happen to us as kids through conditioning and traumas, and um, those are things that cut us off from that connection. We spend our whole lives figuring out ways that we can regain that, whether it's, okay, I'm going to make a bunch of money and that's going to bring me the validation that I need so I can connect with people in that way. I can become more attractive. It's all these different methods that we have, but sometimes we just need to truly focus in on the feeling of what connection feels like and the need for it deep inside at the soul level. And that becomes the most important thing. And it can reinvigorate our
Mhm.
priorities towards moving more towards connection in a healthy way, rather than all these ancillary external things that we try to focus on in order to build that. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense in that.
Yeah.
So are we saying that this should be like a regular practice?
Yeah.
And
I think,
how would you do that? How do you do that, Adam?
well, for me, in meditation or um, in my medicine work, especially,
Mhm.
working with plant medicines, you often experience death, where it takes you into these spaces of of alternate reality and experience. I say alternate, but in essence, there's a deep truth to this reality.
The bigger
A
reality.
bigger, yeah, it's much bigger, and it gives more of a sense of experience of death, not just thinking about death. So it's a process that, for me anyway, helps to as I said earlier, create this filter of filtering out all of that which is distracting so that you can have this full focus on what is important. Um, Kind of struggling to explain this because it's so much in that experience is ineffable. It's non-describable, as you guys know.
Mhm.
Um, the times that I have experienced the soul death or the dissolution of the ego or the mystical experience, as we call it in medicine work, it has been an illumination of what is real in many ways. And what is real is love and connection. And what
Mm.
is not real is all of the distractions that are around that. It's all of the perceived suffering. It's all of the perceived slights. It's all of the anger. It's all of the things inside of us that keep us separate from what is true. And the truth is love, that
Okay.
we are this. Yes.
Okay. Now I want to pull this one to Haye because Haye is an expert on anger work.
Mhm.
And I have this idea that anger has something to do with death as well. Have you ever thought about that one, Haye?
Yeah. Um, let's call it the death scream, the scream
Yeah.
of death. That's where these two realms connect, I guess. Because I guess I don't think anger is something wrong, is something negative. It's there, it's not something that we have to suppress because otherwise it wouldn't be there. So I think anger can also be I don't know. I'm a bit stuck here.
Well, I'd say this because from the anger work that I've done, my experience is that once I do that, when I really allow myself to be fully expressing my anger, all the pent-up anger, everything that frustrated me in my life, thereafter I feel so much alive.
Mhm.
And that's basically the complete opposite of death. But in order to allow that anger, I need to face the death of my ego, allowing myself to be angry.
Hmm.
So for me, it has a lot to do with ego death, letting go of who I think I am, the story that I've built.
Yeah.
Well, this is a parallel also to the medicine work because in
Exactly.
this ego death during medicine, all of that which you think that you are tends to fall away.
Yeah.
And what you're left with is your essence. That's your core. That's who you truly are. And if you can touch that and feel that without all the other layers around it, even just once in your life, then the fear of death tends to melt away. At least that's what I've found.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And anger is an expression or a release or letting go, as you said, of a lot of those layers that are around the true essence and the true core. So it makes sense if you're able to let some of that go, you're stripping off some of that identity, some of that ego.
I have another association with death. I suddenly realized as we're talking about this, and that was very strong around the death of my father because that sort of blew all our security out of the window. Everyone was, what the fuck is this? Never in my life have I felt hornier than in that time. It was incredible. I felt so much life energy running through me. And I was shit scared. Shit scared how we're going to manage this, how we're going to do that with the company, how we're going to do this with the house, how do we solve all these financial troubles. And my God, just to feel that life current racing through me, this thrill of, but I'm still alive.
Mm, mm,
I can't negate it. He's dead. He's fucking dead. I'm standing in front of his coffin.
mhm.
I'm alive.
Mm,
So what am I going to do?
mm.
Yeah, it's very much the case.
Yeah, this is a really good reflection, Niels, because in that experience of death and seeing it around you, you can also develop a great appreciation for the fact that you are actually still alive.
Yeah,
I had a medicine journey one time with Iboga.
yeah.
I'm sorry, with Bufo, which is a very powerful, the most powerful psychedelic known right now. And it's quite short, it's 45 minutes long, but I was in timeless space and experienced death. And when I started coming out of it, I remember the first thing I noticed when I was coming back was a fly that was buzzing around me in the ceremony room. And I could hear the sound, and it started bringing me back. And it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard in my entire life because I realized, holy shit, I'm still alive.
Fine.
And I was coming back into this physical body, and I had such a deep appreciation for the opportunity to live in this body on this beautiful planet that I came out of it more alive than ever because of that deep appreciation, going from death into life. And I think this is why, or this is where meditating on death can have a very profound effect on how we're still living. Brings up
Well said.
this joy, that we have this opportunity, this very short amount of time on this planet to be fully present in this body. And we are so unique, at least I feel, in this entire universe to have this opportunity that our souls incarnated in this. So let's make the best of it in a short amount of time and enjoy every single fucking moment that we're in these bodies.
Yeah.
And
Also with the pain, the joy and the pain, it's all part of this human experience.
yeah, and I think, Adam, because I agree with you. And of course, there is like the joy and the bliss in realizing that you're still alive and that you want to enjoy it, that even the buzzing of a fly is like, oh. But I
Mhm.
think that that's only a result of allowing yourself also to feel the pain and the impermanence of life. When you really let that in, only then you can open yourself up for that quality of life. So I think that's like it goes two ways. If you allow the idea of dying into your system, then you will open up for other qualities in life that you might be blocked from that. Yeah, because you're like not fully engaging with life because you're denying the fact that you're gonna die. But if you allow yourself the idea that you're gonna die, then suddenly, yeah, it opens up a lot of joy. That sounds
Yeah.
very funny, but it is.
And if you read the stories of people who've had near-death experiences, like Niels, I think you were the one who said somebody that had one. They experience the same thing. They have this near-death experience, and when they come back, there's this deep appreciation for being alive, and many of them completely change their lives.
Oh, definitely.
So what
No.
was your experience, Niels, or your relatives'
Well, my,
experience?
my, my my mother,
Your mother.
she was given up. She was 50 at the time, I think she was. After the death of my father, she didn't want to live anymore. So basically, she ended up 5 years later in hospital, and they said, okay, her liver's gone. She's in a coma. She's got stomach bleeds. She's got 24 hours to live.
Mhm.
But she didn't die. On the contrary, a day later, she was out of the coma, drinking a cup of tea. And her physician said, this is medically impossible, what's happening here. But yeah, she is still alive. And she lived on for another 33 years.
Wow.
But the funny thing was, we had immediately our old mother back with a sense of humor, never touched alcohol anymore. And she had only one interest. She couldn't care less what happened in the world. The only thing that really, really motivated her was to be with people, connection, and particularly to be with her children. And when we asked her, first of all, she did not want to talk about it. And then after a year, she finally said, well, I wanted to join your father. I had enough of it, all that stress and all those problems. And yes, I was in that tunnel that everyone talks about of the white light, and it was beautiful. Yeah. And then she heard my younger brother, Peter, saying, Mom, you can't leave us. We need you. Yeah. Oh, and I decided to come back. And this is basically what happened, and it touches me. She came back for love. She felt the love for her children. The love and death are very, very closely related.
Mhm.
And that gave her another 33 years. So yeah, and I find that still, incredible
Mm. Mm.
because all the doctor says you cannot come back from a liver that's gone. But she came and it started fully functioning again.
Mm. Wow.
So
The power of love.
the power of love.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now you can't, what I also learned is she had to go all the way that deep to get to it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And thank God she experienced it. And thank God she came back.
So how do we do that without actually dying, almost dying, almost dying? Right? That's the question, right?
I think a signature approach in what we do is confrontation, taking no bullshit and keep pushing to when we feel the essence coming out in whatever way we can think of.
Yeah. And I think also you can also practice dying by allowing yourself to die in the moment, to do something that is
Exactly.
like very confrontational and where you really have to let go your identity. I'm not saying this is about shame, but this is more about doing something that is like super awkward to do, or exposing yourself or showing something of yourself that you've never done before. Yeah? Um, where you confront part of yourself, with dying. So, okay, you can let go of this. You don't need to protect this anymore. You can let go of this. Hmm. Yeah. Now I'm saying this, it's like, yeah, there's a lot to. You can already practice dying a lot during your lifetime because every construct you build in your head that is like some form of identity, you can let go of that, and that is dying. Huh?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm a drum and bass DJ. I can let go of that idea, then I would, die with that piece. It's still
Mm.
alive, to be honest, but that could be something. Yeah.
And Haye, you do these presentation boot camps for people, right?
Yeah.
And you always hear people who are nervous talking in front of others, and they're standing up there and they're like, I feel like I'm dying up here, right? Literally, that's what you say. I'm dying in front of all these people. Inside, I'm dying.
Yeah.
And this is going to what you said about being vulnerable and being in that very difficult confrontational moment. It is an opportunity to die and to really be with it instead of pushing it away, right?
Yeah. And then dying is a very nice experience because if you're in front of a group and there's like 10, 20, 30 people looking at you, yeah, that's usually the moment that people say, oh, I want to die. I want to just sink into the ground and get over with this. But then, if you start relaxing in that moment, if you kind of start enjoying that place, because that is possible. There's a lot of people enjoying being on stage because they're at ease with the fact that people are looking at them. And then there's can be great joy in that. And then, because you let go of a certain performance that you think you have to do, you let go of that you need to perform in a certain way. If you can just be yourself there, yeah, just like we are talking right now, then that is such a relaxation. And that is, if you call that dying, then that's a great experience. It brings you back to love because that's what it is. People looking at you. There's nobody in the audience who wants you to die or who wants you to fail. No, everybody's like, hey, come on, do your thing. Yeah. So it's a great opportunity to practice dying is being in front, is on being on stage and
Yeah.
start and practicing relaxing there.
And that's something I think we can do in so many different areas of life because we're constantly experiencing these little deaths. Like you had you had brought up this thing about you being a DJ and letting that go, right? Identity death is a big one. When you've built up your identity around, being a businessman or being an athlete or being the single guy or whatever it happens to be. And then life transitions and changes and transforms. And suddenly you're not that anymore. Whoa, that is a moment of deep death. And that's, I think for men, especially, we struggle with that quite a bit. Who am I now? Now that I've lost this job, or now that I'm not single and partying and I'm a husband and I feel constricted in my life. Who am I now? And that moment of identity crisis, which a lot of people talk about happens when you reach midlife, right? The whole idea of the midlife crisis is basically a death for men. And how do we then make it through that? And I think that is a huge practice for us moving closer to actual physical death. It's an
Yeah,
opportunity to practice it.
definitely. And I think what you just described, Adam, this is like the ultimate practice, masculine practice, is to relax in that you don't know it. Yeah, is to like, oh, okay. So right now, I've run a business for the past few years, and I noticed that it's not thriving me anymore. I'm getting bored with that. Oh, but I don't know yet what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do next. Okay, this is very uncomfortable, and I think this is like also a great opportunity to relax into that, to don't panic and to trust like
Mm,
that, the universe will provide inspiration, a hunch, or a new direction. And I think that is to practice that. Then you give a signal, which is completely different quality in comparison to panicking and oh money. Oh, that's a completely different signal if you practice like anyway.
Well, I
How do you
think,
do that, Niels? Niels, like what would your suggestion be for how to actually practice that? How do you practice trust?
well, the thing is, well, I speak from my experience that this is why I'm so much in favor of a code, that I've become aware of what is important for me and that how it presents itself in the outer world, whether I'm a CEO or a trainer or a coach or God knows what, is not important. Or a numerologist, that's a facade. But how do I find my place with the values that I resonate with? And if I stick to my values, my experience is that somehow life gives me the opportunities to practice them. And that's why the trust comes in. Because if you've known, if I keep speaking my truth, I might get kicked out. Yes, but there will come an opportunity if I keep speaking my truth where people actually say, we want you because you speak your truth. You don't sell
Mm,
us bullshit.
mm,
And then a whole new world suddenly opens.
mm.
I think it's a great quality when you see that in someone else, when you see that someone is relaxed with dying in a moment.
Yeah,
And then it's like, oh, that's nice. That
yeah.
person just doesn't give a fuck. That relaxes. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Adam.
It's
Thanks,
a
Adam.
very deep subject we could go much deeper on too. And will in
Looking
our
forward to the next podcast.
yes. And I'm sure that in the Inner Freedom Bootcamp, we'll be covering this topic of death too, right?
Definitely.
And the
Yeah.
importance, especially for us men. So,
Brilliant.
yeah. Love you lots.
Love you lots.
Ciao, ciao.